I'm Denise Graham Zahn, and I've written a Christmas story called Legend of the 21st North Pole Santa. And I've invited a friend of mine to read it to you. In fact, it's really her story that she shared with me about her family. I would like to invite the parents and grandparents to come and listen to this story, because you're the ones that are really going to be sharing it with the little ones. They're a little small to grasp the entire story, but it affects them. Because this story, I hope, will change the way we think of Santa Claus. You know, in my age certainly, and my children, we grew up believing there was one Santa Claus who delivered presents all over the world in one night. Now, how many kids have questioned that one? Well, here's the answer. I don't want to give it all away because my friend Mary Santa Claus, and that's M-E-R-R-Y, Mary Santa Claus, like Merry Christmas. She's going to tell you the story. She'll read the story to you. But again, I'd like, if you're a teenager and you have a little brother or sister or a little cousin, a little friend, they're the ones that ultimately the story is for, but it's the parents and grandparents, or maybe a big brother and sister, that will tell it to them through my story. So, welcome, Merry Santa Claus, and Merry Christmas to you. Hello. I'm Mary Santa Claus. I know Denise Graham Zahn, my friend, just introduced me. Actually, I want to tell you, she's not just a friend. We're distant relatives. So I really appreciate the fact that she took the time and interest to look me up so that I could tell her the story of my family. And she put it into this book, The Legend of the 21st North Pole Santa. And she invited me to read this to you. And again, what I'd like is, if you're a teenager, invite your mom and dad, invite your grandma and grandpa, you. Share this with the little ones. Because it's written a little bit old for the little ones to read, but the story is ultimately for them, just like my friend said. So without further ado, I'd like to read you one chapter of the Legend of the 21st North Pole Santa. It's 14 chapters, and I'll read a chapter at a time so you can listen to it as you have time. And then there's an epilogue at the end. The Legend of the 21st North Pole Santa by Denise Graham Zahn. Chapter 1, which is entitled A Fine Pair. And here you have Rudy and Holly. I'm so excited, Rudy, said Holly. Everyone will arrive by tomorrow night, as long as the weather holds out. Papa said we're supposed to get some really bad weather soon, though. I hope it doesn't cause problems at the airport for incoming flights. At least if they get here, I know you and the other magic reindeer will certainly get them out on time. She stopped brushing Rudy's coat for a moment and looked at the animal contentedly munching his hay. He turned his aged but bright brown eyes toward her, still munching, and Holly switched her focus to him. That was Holly's nature. That's my daughter. To be concerned about others. And that's why she was so special to everyone, including this old red-nosed reindeer. You must be getting excited too, Rudy, she said. Christmas is your time to shine, as everybody knows. Rudy was Holly's favorite among the reindeer, though she didn't let it on to the others. But Rudy knew and enjoyed his favorite position in Holly's generous heart. Resuming where she left off and brushing his coat, Holly continued her one-sided conversation. And after giving a short snort and a shrug of his head, Rudy turned his head back and continued to savor his meal and Holly's company. "This year is going to be so special for me," Holly said. "Once everyone arrives and my cousins and I are initiated to take the Christmas reins, I will be officially installed as the next North Pole Santa, the 21st generation of North Pole Santas. I'll follow in Papa's footsteps just as he followed in his Papa's and his Papa's before him, clear back to the first North Pole Santa, who was called Kris Kringle, Father Christmas, and St. Nicholas. It's a fine heritage, Rudy, and you and I will be together forever." Harold Santa Claus, Holly's papa, my husband, was just coming into the stable to talk to Holly when he picked up the last part of her conversation. He sighed heavily. He loved his daughter as deeply as any father had ever loved a child, and he was about to break her heart. And no father should ever have to break his child's heart. And that's the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2, Little Star. And here's a star. Papa stood for a moment watching Holly, remembering her as an infant and then as a toddler. Holly was the most beautiful of babies, with lots of gleaming black hair and a round, rosy face. She always had a twinkle, Papa said, right from the time she was born. That's why Papa called her his little star. He smiled for an instant, remembering this and how it delighted Holly to be called Little Star. Then his thoughts turned to a time some 13 years ago. Papa's wife, Mary, had been caretaker for a dozen or more children in North Pole. These were the children of locals who knew that Mary would care for their children with the loving tenderness they themselves provided. They were Athabascan, Inuit, American Indian, and non-native Alaskans whose families had moved there from the American mainland. The children were a joy to Mary, who sadly found that she and Papa could never have children of their own. These children kept her busy, and Papa was as happy as she was to have them around. That winter was brutally cold, and the snow just never seemed to stop. The accumulation was deeper than anyone remembered. A blizzard had just started when the parents were arriving to pick up their children from Mary. All the parents arrived except for the parents of one little girl. Papa and Mary were concerned when they didn't arrive within half an hour of the other parents and called the local police to begin a search. The news was not good. On that day, the child became an orphan, with no family to take her in, unusual in this community. It was a clear message to Mary, however, that this child should be hers and Papa's. So Holly, the little star, child of Athabascan parents, that Papa and Mary had cared for since birth, became their adopted child. And they would be the only parents that little star would remember, though Papa and Mary paid careful attention to honor Holly's birth parents as well as her Athabascan heritage. The adoption, however, raised more than a few eyebrows in the Santa Claus family. And that's the end of chapter 2.